Hi, I'm Laura Canty Samuel, and I'm your host. Welcome to the Goss. When it comes to news and culture, oh yeah, we have an opinion. But tonight, we have more than an opinion. We have a duty. Over the past year, racism and racial violence against Asians and Pacific Islanders has grown at an alarming rate. 2 days ago, this fact came to a head when the Asian community was forced into a club that none of us should hold membership to. In 2015, we saw the Charleston Church Massacre, where the lives of Black parishioners were cruelly extinguished. In 2018, the Pittsburgh Synagogue Massacre, where Jewish worshippers were murdered without mercy. And here, now, in 2021, a mass shooter in Georgia set his sights on members of the Asian community, determined to end their lives because, as a Cherokee County sheriff's captain in Georgia explained, the shooter was just having a bad day. Guess who had an even worse day, you fucking idiot? And how dare you call it what it is, hate? I mean, if we were even to give the shooter the benefit of the doubt, anyone who cares about equality would have had the decency to at least mix it up a little. Hit a white spa, maybe then a Hispanic wellness center. He was in and outside of Atlanta. You have to have a pretty clear intent to seek out Asians when you can't step outside in Atlanta without tripping over a Black person or a Black business. He could have at least thrown in a Black beauty parlor to round things out. Call it what it is, hate. Hate against Asians. But at the Goss, we love our Asian friends. And for that reason, tonight, they're taking over. We're featuring some of the best minds in comedy who also happen to be of the Asian persuasion. Listen, learn, laugh. Stay for the talk back, where we'll get to hear from a panel stacked with Asian voices who will tell us like it is. I'm Laura Canty Samuel, and that's my hot goss.
Woody, this is God.
Oh, uh, hi, God.
Have you seen Crazy Rich Asians yet?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Woody,
Yeah, God.
see Crazy Rich Asians again.
It's like 2 hours long.
Yes, but it fixed Asian representation. You can stop complaining now.
What?
Remember when you were like, there's no Asians in Hollywood? Well, you got your all-Asian movie. Racism has been solved.
Okay, I'm glad the movie exists, but I think there's still some work to be done.
No, it's fixed. It's like when Black Panther came out. Racism was also solved that time, too.
I don't know about that.
Remember Wonder Woman? That one solved sexism. Let's see. What else? The usual suspects.
What did that movie solve?
Lying. Liar, liar also solved lying.
Okay, God, I gotta go.
Gotta go see Crazy Rich Asians?
No.
93% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, Woody.
God damn it, God.
Hello, American tourists, and welcome to the Philippines, mabuhay! Thank you so much for picking Manang Alice's authentic tour of Manila, the Philippines capital. I promise to show you the parts of Philippine history you keep wanting to forget. Colonizers. Everybody gather around as we begin our tour here in Manila's famous Luneta Park. This park is host to many notable moments in Filipino history, from the start of the People's Power Revolution to the deadly tour group hijacking of 2010. Maybe you remember from the CNN, but it's the only kind of news American TVs get from developing nations, especially the ones you keep talking over. Everybody's on the bus? Okay, good. Our next stop will be an Instagram stop. As part of your authentic colonizer tour, we have some orphans for your profile pictures. I hear you want it for your Tinder. Don't worry. These kids, they are pros. They were almost adopted by Angelina Jolie and Madonna. They weren't adopted because I don't know. Maybe they don't think we have the genocide. We do. We definitely have the genocide. American sponsored in case you were thinking of adopting. But before we get off the tour bus, I have a special present for you. Get it? White Savior! Because our Jesus is the white Jesus. That is from 300 years of Spanish colonization from 1521 to 1898. Yes. See, we are the Latinos of Asia. That is why our country it is very Christian. Why Filipino last names are Spanish, even though our faces it is Asian. And why the old foreigners they keep asking where are you really from before they ask us to be their brides. That's why I recognize your grandfathers.
Please put your hands together for Michelle Bennett.
Hi.
What's up? What's up?
It was funny to watch myself in the back or like backstage watching that, like you guys being so distinctly and effortlessly cool, and me with a freaking blazer being like,
Oh, oh yeah.
So I'm gonna share my screen because I have I'm here for the TED convention.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go ahead and share it. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored, privileged even to be here at TEDx Gowanus giving this talk. This topic I think will be at top of mind for most people, especially given that this is a POC space and also given the most recent racial reckoning that's happened in our nation. I know it's deeply personal to me. So without further ado, I'd love to present my TED Talk. So you've got a white dad. As I said, this topic is really, really personal to me. This is for people who, specifically POCs, who find themselves not only in proximity to whiteness, but a descendant of it, which is honestly a terrifying position to be in. So I've outlined 3 simple steps to help you navigate this position, unpack your identity, and hopefully find a way to navigate this world. Step 1 is determining your racial identity. This one is actually pretty simple because if you find yourself being a POC while at the same time finding you have a white father, the answer is probably very simple. You're probably half Asian. This is for a number of reasons. The first being more that the most common interracial relationship, and all of this because whiteness is deeply rooted in the patriarchy and heteronormativity, is going to be very gendered and very patriarchal. So I do want to name that up front. The most common interracial hetero partnership is the white male and the Asian female. You can walk down any street in Williamsburg and experience this anecdotally. You'll notice 2 patterns. It is most traditionally a white man and an Asian woman, and the Asian woman is traditionally way out of the man's league. But I will kind of continue to unpack why the former is true and why you are indeed probably half Asian. It actually stems back to the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, when there was an influx of Chinese male immigrants for the California Gold Rush. Because they were indebted to white brokers and not able to bring their families over, there was then an influx of Chinese female immigrants that were prostitutes or sex slaves to cater to their needs. This became a stereotype, which we all know white people are clinically addicted to, that became the basis for the legislature that would exclude them from immigrating to the United States in future years. The stereotypes around Chinese immigrants, specifically Chinese women, were impotent counterparts. So they viewed Chinese men as weak and fragile and unworthy. Because the Chinese women were traditionally prostitutes, they were seen as docile, service-oriented, but still having a proclivity for the sexual and the immoral because they were serving as prostitutes. And because this was tainted by Orientalism, fetishization, eroticism, there were myths like horizontal vaginas. This particular myth I won't debunk if it makes you want to have sex with me more. If there is a TED talk or a talk back after this, I'm more than happy to unpack that a little bit more and field any questions. More contemporary stereotypes that kind of fuel these partnerships are the idea of tiger mothers. So a couple years ago, the book Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother was published, in which author Amy Chua advocated for Jewish men and Asian women to pair up because their cultural views on offspring were aligned, and thus they said that they would produce genetically and culturally superior offspring that would contribute to our capitalist society. And Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother is a book that white people loved. It was the book they picked that year to read by a minority author to kind of just see what we were up to or planning in terms of potentially taking over their power. In sum, white men are weak and thus seek out political structures, economic systems, and pussy that maintain that power. So that's step one. Moving on to step two, determine what kind of white your white dad is. Now, as a minority, I have to concede that there are sadly different types of white people, even white men that are attracted to Asian women. This is a courtesy not typically extended to minorities by white people. I do want to name that up front, but sadly, that is the way of the world. I will say, like gender and like sexuality, white identification among white dads does exist on a spectrum from the traditionally feminine to the traditionally masculine. We begin on the feminine side with the weeb or the weeaboo. This is someone who has probably harassed you online and is so consistently emasculated in their everyday life that they seek out who they presume will be the most submissive partner, Asian women, who may or may not have big old anime titties. On the traditionally masculine side of the spectrum, we have the troop. The back of this man's neck may or may not look like a 6-pack of hot dogs. And if someone commits the microaggression of asking them if they met their wife in Vietnam, whether or not that is temporally possible based on their age, they will say yes, regardless of whether or not this is true. They will say yes. For those of you who don't recognize this image, this is actually Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump attending Forrest Gump's wedding with his Asian wife, Susan. Some other men we'll find on this spectrum also include Northwestern MFAs who still ended up as high school English teachers, who view themselves as way overqualified as they are, but are consistently emasculated by cooler high school students and thus seek the companionship of a more docile partner. The guy doing kicks in your local park, this is self-explanatory. And my dad. My dad is what's known in academia as a tactical white. While not quite a troop, is known to wear Oakleys, has a radar detector, considers installing security cameras on his home and watching the footage a hobby, and has a huge affinity for Taekwondo. Can't get enough. So step 3, now that we know who you are and who your dad is, we can kind of outline some do's and don'ts to help you navigate these spaces and your relationship with your father. I'll start with the do's. Do participate in martial arts when they enroll you. It'll give you a great sense of discipline, is a great form of exercise. And if you're good enough, it'll be cooler to people later in life. People will appreciate that. It's like piano lessons, but useful, right? Tactical. The only exception to this is don't do it if it's karate. To quote a comedian that I can't name right now, karate is the Dane Cook of martial arts. Do not do karate. Second, make it a family affair when it's officially cargo short season. Cargo short season, specifically the first day, is very culturally significant to white dads. It's a huge day for them. So really lean in on that day. Really make them feel seen. And they'll be riding such a high that they may not say anything problematic for maybe the next 2 hours or so, which brings us to our next point. Call them out when they say problematic stuff. It just is what it is. Sadly, you are the result of their imperialist ideas. But hopefully, if we continue to critique theirs and call them out, that's where the buck will stop, right? With us, it's a cross to bear. But listen, when you're a POC, it's the name of the game. And lastly, open yourself up to the possibility that a Sunday spent at the Home Depot is a Sunday well spent. This one took me quite some time to truly internalize, but I guarantee you it is well worth it, and you will catch me in that plant section. Moving on to the don'ts. Do not take it personally when they do stuff like, or when they say stuff like, newsflash, buddy. I have tried and cannot track this historically to find its roots, but I believe it's rooted culturally in spending hours watching a cable news network of their choice. Next, do not let their authoritative tone fool you into thinking that they've ever thought critically about anything. Okay, the world is built for them. All right, they've never had to question the systems at play that have always worked for them. They've never had to think from anyone else's perspective. Okay, but they think they really got their finger on the pulse of society because of this, when in reality, they have their proverbial thumb up their proverbial ass. But because they are delusional enough to think that they do, they will talk to you authoritatively and talk downward. But studies show that only around 40% of white dads can read. So if you ask yourself, has he done the reading? Chances are he probably hasn't. Do not keep your shoes on in the house. It's chaotic. It's disturbing that your father keeps his dirty street shoes on in the house. Listen to your Asian mother and take your shoes off in the house. Okay? And lastly, do not, under any circumstances, tell them what WAP means. This is a can of worms that you will never recover from. You will never escape. You will enter the sunken place. There is no escaping. I cannot stress enough that you should never translate this for them. Okay? In conclusion, it is a burden to be the buffer between the rest of the world and your father's chaotic colonialism. But it's best to approach this with love, compassion, and plenty of SPF 50. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
So something about me is I used to date white guys, but I want something different now. I want a David Kim, or even a Brian Kim. I do a Peter Lee. I got a new type, you see. I want a beautiful human who knows about Kuman. I wanna have sex with a hot Asian. Then we could chat about being Asian. Like, does your mom cut me with scissors? I can relate, 'cause we both share the same culture. Boy, that's all I want. I fell in love with Ginu. He was strong and Korean too. He casually said he believed that girls are too
angry these days. Patriarchy isn't that bad. It's just tradition. And there's a reason it became tradition, because the construct honestly works.
fuck these Koreans. Not all Koreans, but you know, patriarchal Koreans.
Like, read one book, not written by a man. Stop referencing Joker as the greatest movie of all time, you fucking incel.
I wanna have sex with hot woke Asians. Meeting guys like this is enraging. It's when you start developing standards. Dating gets hard. Oh, can a woke Asian fuck me? Boy, that's all I want. And I found a school teacher. He'd reference books by women. We'd have discourse about racism and talk about therapy.
Nothing hotter than an Asian guy that goes to therapy.
So we started to get sensual. He made sure it was consensual.
May I kiss you?
He said there's something that you should know. I said relax, don't worry.
I want something serious, not some meaningless blowjob.
Then how about a serious blowjob?
No, I want a relationship. Are you just looking for someone who fucks good?
I want a hot, woke Asian that fucks good.
That's me. You're describing me.
But a hot, woke Asian that casually fucks good. I keep investing time and money on dating. Throw me a bone, oh can a hot woke Asian casually fuck me good? Boy, that's all I want.
Rap break. She wants to get it on with some prerequisites. Woke Asian fucks good. NSA. That's
That's
it. Not too much, and she's in luck because here's hot woke Asians who casually fuck. Here we go. Meet Brian. He's
Too short,
meet Alan. He's
too tall.
meet Paul.
He's
He's
exactly the right height, but he reminds me of my scary dad.
okay. Meet Young Suk.
Looks like he has coronavirus.
How about Barry?
Looks like he'd betray his best friend.
Okay, Sean.
Literally looks like a pear.
Her standards seem to be increasingly unmeetable. This perfect guy might be unfeasible. Word.
What about you?
I only date white girls.
It's when you start developing standards. Dating gets hard. I want that unicorn Asian. Boy, that's all I want.
Woo! We love you, SJ. This is just a phase.
Wait, this song's not about us?
Dad, listen. Today's a big day, okay? Sam is up for promotion, and if he gets it, I'm gonna propose. Yeah. You can just what can you say? You can just make small talk. Just say, do you like to travel? Travel? Do you like to travel? Yeah. And then you can ask him, where do you like to travel? Where? Travel? Where do you like to travel? Yeah. You got it? Oh no, he's gonna be here soon. Oh, okay. The reason I asked you here is I need you to take a video of when I proposed. Do you know how to do that?
Video? Okay.
Congratulations! He's not here yet. He's not here yet. Oh, there he is. Yeah, Sam, hi. Sam, this is my dad. This is Sam.
Hi. Yeah, that thing.
Sam, did you get the promotion?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I'm going to New York.
Oh, wait, well, I can't go to New York and I have to take care of my dad. You know that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm going to New York. 뭐라 그러는 거야?
You got the promotion.
Oh, congratulations!
No. But you weren't even going to talk to me about it? You were just going to move across the country?
Alex. Sam, do you like to travel? No. How about Sam? Where do you like to travel?
I was going to propose.
Oh, congratulations!
No. Stop. Sorry, Alex.
Yeah. 저 어디
No,
갔어?
sorry. Sam broke up with me.
어? 뭐라고?
우리 헤어졌어. 걔 일 때문에 우리 헤어졌어.
저 개새끼들아 죽여버려! Alex, don't cry. Huh? Are you single now? You're free. Congratulations.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Canty Samuel. Welcome to the Goss. Hey, okay, hear you, Pavar.
Sorry, I was on mute. We can do that again. I'm Pavar Snipe. How are you doing?
Hey, doing well. So happy to be able to take this time to share these moments with our Asian fam because they need support, right?
Absolutely, positively.
There's a lot of ugliness that's been happening, and we need to stop it.
Yeah, it's been emotional for so many of our family, our friends, our extended family. We've become family as we've been doing the Goss over the past I don't know how many months or so. And because of that, we decided to dedicate our Goss Gab as our weekly talkback session after our wonderful scripted segment. And this week we will actually be doing something a little bit different, right, Laura?
That's right. I mean, usually this is the time where we get together, look at the news, and say, what the fuck? And today that question is more serious than ever. Due to the tragic shootings in Georgia, targeting members of the Asian community, we are using our platform to speak out against hate.
And as a matter of fact, this week we're going to have our wonderful friends from the Goss, our team members who are going to be teaming up with some other wonderful Asian voices in the comedy community today. So we have our wonderful Dominique Nespros, Michelle Chan Bennett, Jonathan Liu, and special guests from the Asian American comedy community, Otter Lee, Kyle Marion, Woody Fu, Mike Nguyen, and cultural commentator Anissa Khalifa. And they're going to have an open discussion about the state of the world that we are in right now.
So please stay tuned and join us with your questions and comments in the chat. And let's work together to stop hate against our Asian community. And now, over to you, Dominique Nespros.
Hello. Thanks for having me. I mean, it's always good to be here with you every week, but it's extra special, and I really appreciate that you guys are using your platform in this way. So I just want to say thank you so much. And how I appreciate all the check-ins that you have done. I don't know about y'all, but I feel like I have aged so quickly. I'm just so old. I dumb is the truth. Let me tell you what. We're gonna get into all the variety of experiences that we have as Asian Americans, because even though people might think we only come from China, Japan, or Korea, we're actually from all over the place. There's like a whole ass continent there. Oh, thank you. I feel like I'm getting so much love right now. But yeah, and just Pavar and Laura, y'all are just like the bestest. And making comedy in these times feels like so fraught, but to do it with y'all lovely folks is truly a blessing. So yes, hi everyone, I'm Dominique Nisperos here in Lenape-Hoking, otherwise known under the colonial name as Brooklyn, New York. So I'll be moderating it off tonight. I look good for 104 years old. The secret is the blood of innocence. No, that's not funny. But I want to just say thank you for all of you for coming. We're hoping that folks can join us in participating in the chat and sharing your views and making this more of a forum for everybody. But why don't we bring on all of our lovely guests who are here to help make comedy in this conversation. We've got, and I'm not sure the order that they'll come off, but we mentioned them. Kyle Viterbo is a lovely comedian from New York who works for Science Fridays and has a long-running show at the Caveat Theater. Woody Fu, you might recognize from such things as film and television and the long-running sketch team, The Foundation. Michelle Chan Bennett here at the Goss. Otter Lee, one of the founders of the Asian Comedy Festival. Anissa Khalifa, who I believe does Drama Citizen. Jonathan Liu, also one of our Goss team members here, and Mike Nguyen, host of the Asian Not Asian podcast. Thank you all for coming. Hi, welcome to the Goss.
Hey.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Mike, we can hear you the best of everyone because you have a professional microphone, unlike the rest of us.
Listen,
know.
okay, when you don't have good ideas, you can compensate with damn it, Otter.
Ah.
Ow.
Hey, everybody.
Oh,
And
fucking
he has
Otter.
like studio headphones also.
Right, exactly. Okay. Gosh. Okay. Anyways, thanks for having me.
What's good for you to join? And also, Greg, one of our stunners here, Theo Greg from the Goss. Do y'all know each other? Introductions, meet, greet, lovely. So let's get into it. Hi, Michelle.
I feel like we didn't choreograph this properly, but I'm trying my best.
It's okay. And my video is also like not flowing quite right. Also, Otter, like good with the late join. Oh, Kyle.
Hi, Kyle.
Oh, with that hair. So, I'm really interested to hear how y'all are processing these experiences. If you are making comedy in it, if you are finding comedy, or what the deal is with that. And then just having like a general conversation about experiences of API resilience, experiences of API hate, and how, it's not like we haven't been dealing with this before, but it does seem to have a bit of a different flavor. And one of the things I want to kick off us talking about is the idea of mental health awareness within the API community. So recent figures show that despite being 3 times more likely, hate crimes against Asian Americans are on the rise. Women, specifically Asian American women, are 3 times more likely to experience acts of aggression. And this is according to Stop API Hate, who have been taking more general surveys and figures on the issue. It's not fitting the legal definitions, or not like keeping that as a limitation of what is considered an act of aggression. But API women are 3 times more likely to experience aggression in their life from strangers on the street and that kind of thing. And yet the Asian American community as a whole is 3 times less likely than white folks to seek out mental health. And I feel like I've personally experienced that within my family, of people like not understanding what therapy is, or not seeing the value of it, or just being like, no, when there's something bad happens, you hold it in, and that's how we roll. I'm curious to know if that's been your experience in the room here. And thanks, Greg, for joining to provide a contrasting perspective too. So.
Everyone's
that's a lot to get
extra
through.
polite.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry. I feel like I just
think,
did a pop quiz. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think the more I think about this, and I've been thinking about this for my entire life, and I think there's been some momentum recently, bad momentum, in forcing us to kind of think about a lot of these issues, and about the issue of mental health. I realize now that pretty much every single kind of joke we've ever made as comedians about our parents is a result of the fact that they didn't seek mental health. So anytime we talk about the fact that our parents love telling us really sad stories about our relatives, oh, did you hear about Auntie Linda? She's got cancer and she's dying. That's like a result, I think, of people not processing trauma in a certain way and then turning that into a story that they are now kind of handing off to us. All the things about when we talk about how Asian food is so good. Asian food is super good because that's one of the ways that our parents process trauma. And these are all things that pass on to us, and then we end up expressing it in different ways. Obviously, a lot of us are comedians, and I think this was our way of dealing with trauma before we kind of explicitly went to seek mental health services. So I think it's all connected. It's all interconnected. So it's not anything new. I think it's just more now we are putting a word to what we've always felt.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I'm Filipino. All the Asians are different kinds of Asians, whether or not like you grew up in a different country or different parts of the US or whatever. And like I know that for my family, they pray it away. They pray, you know, like the answer to, oh no, shit's happening is just like put it in God's hands, rosary it out, and then light a candle, peace, and then keep moving. You know, it's interesting because like looking back, I don't think I've ever really heard people truly process something until it was like later down the line, or people are drinking and they're like laughing or reminiscing with somebody, but it's like by that point it's just a different kind of thing instead of actually processing what happened. So I don't know, for my Filipino family it's definitely every Sunday is just praying it away, you know.
Yeah, for Filipino Catholicism for sure.
Mhm.
Are there other examples that y'all have of, you know, thank you for these shares about like prayer and comedy, but like what are the other sources of resilience in your communities or in your families?
Oh yeah, my uncle. So my family is like all Buddhist, and so the idea that he has is that if you know yourself, you don't need therapy because you know you're kind of living by the candle. You're living in the middle.
Right. It's interesting too because I feel like so much of what therapy is now and what wellness is now borrows heavily from Asian cultures, right? Like all these meditation apps are Buddhism without the like spiritual aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Yoga, right, is like a practice without the spiritual aspect. So it's like in some ways, all of these wellness industries borrow from traditions that we have that are like ways that our people have been coping. And not that like for sure everybody should be going to therapy. Therapy is great, but that's also like something that's relatively new in the scheme of things, right? That's only been accessible for like what, 20-30 years.
Yeah, I went to therapy for quite a bit of time through high school and college, and it didn't work for a lot of the time because every time I would get back from a session, my dad would be like, "Are you fixed yet?" And I'd be like, "No, that's not how therapy works. Like, it's something that you work through a bit every single time that you go, but it's something that you're probably going to have to deal with for life unless you feel like you're doing a little better in a certain situation." But I also know lots of stories of people who stop going to therapy and then things start like going downhill because they don't have that guidance. My mom and I, we were victims of an incident of hate speech a couple weeks ago. A man in Soho, New York City, threatened us and called us racial slurs. And we were just so shocked and so angry that we just yelled back. My mom was like, "Did that asshole just say what I think he did?" And I was like, "He did." And we were like, "You racist fucker." And we yelled at him. And a lot of people don't think that's the best course of action. But from our point of view, we didn't want anything like that to ever happen to anyone else. So we really just called him out and we shamed him and we yelled at him and we scared him away. I mean, I've gotten plenty of white ladies in the comments being like, "I would never ever escalate the conflict ever. That you don't know what could happen." But like we just felt like we had to speak up, you know?
Right.
I think also, hi everyone, sorry I was stuck backstage for a bit. I think also we also never know how we're gonna react until we're put in that situation. And so sometimes you just freeze, or like it depends if you're by yourself and how threatened you feel. If you're in a group, if you're with other people that make you feel safe, you can, be stronger. And I think with the part about therapy and seeking help for mental health as well, a lot of times we don't seek it or we don't understand that we need it until we hit a crisis point. But then like you're already in the middle of this crisis. And I know I'm South Asian, and for the Muslim American community, we kind of all of a sudden hit a crisis point after 9/11 where we were like, oh, wow, we don't really have the institutional mental health resources set up to deal with this as a community. And so in the 20 years since then, a lot of our communities have worked on that and tried to develop that. But it's like once you're already under such a huge burden of like stress and trauma, it's so hard to then be like, oh, like let us gather some rational tools, because you're just like hurting and you're in pain. So that's also really hard.
Yeah, it's kind of like what Kyle, you mentioned, where it's like, it's only when you're drinking on a Sunday and you have that room, or like, it's like that distance from it that enables people to like come back to the things that were really overwhelming at the time. I want to hear from other folks, but we also had this question in the comment about asking about what are our particular backgrounds. How are we connected to the Asian American community? I can kick it off. I'm Dominique. My father is Filipino, but I'm also multiracial. My mother is Mexican. But I've had the experience of, you know, when you're Asian in America, you can be like any kind of Asian. And when you're mixed race, in my experience, when you can be very elusive racially and you get to like encounter all the racial Sherlock Holmeses, like I've gotten all kinds of guesses. It's very fun. I should monetize it, but I'll figure that out. And yeah, what are other folks on the panel? Or how do you identify? Michelle, do you want to? We'll go around this way.
Yeah, I'll go. My mother's Chinese and my father is painfully white. So I will take any vitriol we need to direct at the community. I'll take it.
Tactical white. Cool.
Specifically a tactical one.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm John, and my parents are both Burmese. Although their parents immigrated from Taiwan, so it's always complicated when if it's on the form, I'll put Burmese, but otherwise I'll just put Chinese.
Cool.
Otter here. I am ethnically Chinese, but my dad's relatives immigrated to Taiwan. My maternal grandmother's relatives immigrated to Malaysia, and my maternal grandfather's relatives are from southern China. But most of us have been in America for a very long time.
Long time Americans, I got it.
Hey, I'm Woody. I am like 1,000% Chinese. I've never had any desire to take 23andMe because it'll just be like 100% 0.00 Chinese. I'm like, why did I spend $100 on this? My relationship to the community is basically I was like a self-hating Asian through all of my life. Like I grew up in a very white suburb, and then I went to a very white college, and then never like dealt with racial identity at all until, ironically, I lived in Amsterdam for a year, which is truly the whitest place on planet Earth, and that was where I got so like it got so bad. I was like, oh wait, actually, like I'm totally like miserable and like deeply depressed, which is what galvanized me to do therapy. Speaking of like hitting rock bottom or you know, needing some kind of push because like culturally there's lots of obstacles and stigmas attached to it. That was where I started my therapy journey. Going back to our previous convo.
Yeah. Thanks, Anthony. Mike?
I'm Mike Nguyen. I am Vietnamese American by way of all the hot Republican hotspots, Southern California and then Texas. And so, yeah, you know, there's a ton of Vietnamese Americans in Southern California and quite a lot in Texas as well. And, you know, I think that gave me kind of a different experience. Like California has this, you know, it has a lot of Asian Americans of all kinds. You know, I also went to a UC, and UCs are essentially Asian American schools. Yeah, so they're just Asian American schools that white people are sometimes confused at. So I think that's really what it is. And then, you know, coming into the Asian American comedy community, which I think is so awesome. It's just rad to be part of this Asian American Ocean's 11. You know, so I think, yeah, I'm waiting for the details for the heist. Okay, so it's really I don't know, an honor. I mean, that sounds like I'm joking. It's not. It's really amazing to be part of the community, and I feel that this community is something that's been galvanized in the last couple of years and sort of gelled in the last couple of years, and you know, gaining ever more self-awareness. So yeah, it's cool to be here.
Thanks.
I just want to point out with the Ocean's 11 thing. It's like hilarious because in Ocean's 11 there is a Chinese guy.
Yes.
He's like the circus man, remember? So like literally
Right.
all of us, it would be like a bungle of a heist because we'd all be like contorting ourselves to like get
Yeah. No. We
should.
should. No, Matt Damon will be in this one still, and he has that role now.
It's either that
Right.
or like The Hangover.
Get in the box, Matt. Yeah.
And like Ken Jeong. But we weren't done yet. Let's hear from. We got rearranged, but let's go back around, I guess, to Greg, Kyle, and Anissa.
We can't get through our ethnic backgrounds without mentioning Ken Jeong.
I know.
Yeah, it's a law.
I'm Kyle. I'm first generation Filipino and came to New York as a 10-year-old. And I feel like a lot of my growing up, there's still a huge part of my identity that's very Filipino. But a lot of my growing up is like New York, Elmhurst, Queens, where it's still very predominantly immigrant families. Yeah. And, but the whitest thing about me, aside from my accent, is the name that my mom gifted me, because she was horny for Kyle MacLachlan Dune in '84. So I found out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's dope. And I love this permutation. Anissa and Greg, yeah.
I think I'm the last one. Yes, I am a lifelong nomad. So my parents are both ancestrally from Pakistan, but my mom came with her family to Canada when she was very young. So I'm like third generation on one side, second on the other. And I was born in Toronto, but I've lived in like the Middle East and Eastern Canada. And I moved to North Carolina when I was 11, and that was quite shocking to go to a multicultural place like Toronto and then come to Greensboro, North Carolina. And I did like all of high school there. So I came to understanding or sort of even thinking about identity when I was in 11th grade and September 11th happened. And then I just didn't have a choice because people were calling my mom a terrorist at Walmart. So, then I was like, okay, I'm going to own this. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to have an opinion. I'm going to claim my identity. So that's just kind of been the beginning of my journey.
Beautiful. And our guest collaborator here, Greg.
Hey, yeah, I'm just here. I'm not Asian, but I love y'all. You know what I'm saying? And I'm here just to contribute. Afro Latino. My family's from Peru, which has, just a side note, has a rich Asian community there, and it's very ingrained into our culture. But I don't think that's why I'm here. I'm just here to talk to for sure.
Greg's family. You're the Goss fam. You're part of the choir. You're part of it. We had some topics that we had lined up to talk about, like what's going on this week. And we've gotten at by the way, I just want to say that was the nicest and most best way that I've ever heard anyone ask that question. To be like, I'm curious about the backgrounds instead of what I've gotten, which is the are you Chinese, Japanese, or Korean?
They act like they'll win a freaking prize if they get it right. And the prize is racism, so don't do it.
I guess the only way to win is not to play the game show.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I don't know. I want to just take the temperature of the room. Is it worse when folks try to do that, I'm going to guess your background shit, and they're absolutely wrong, or when they're really spot on? Which one do you find worse?
Oh, but definitely the second for me.
When they're spot on?
When they're spot on. Right? They're like, you were loud, so at first I thought you were Korean, but the self-loathing means you're Chinese, and I'm like, lots of Asians are self-loathing, but you're right.
Yeah, because you don't get the moral high ground anymore when they're correct. You're like, oh, your racism is actually a very accurate radar.
I don't mind it if they get it, but if from my name, they're all, oh, Nguyen, oh, you're Vietnamese. I'm like, oh, we got a reader. Okay. It's not bad. And then they ask me if I have pho on me. I'm like, no, I don't. That's not how it works. But,
oh, I do have some pho on me.
Oh, shit. Oh, I was going to take a bite that we can share,
Thank you. That's great. No, rarely, nobody ever truly guesses my race. Sometimes they'll get Filipino, but they're never like, you're Filipino and Mexican. So that's always like, but when they start getting close, they're like, you're mixed. And like, I feel like they're bringing out their like racial dowsing rods. I'm like, no, like, stop. But it's also interesting to be like able to transition races, but just by going like this, like Latina, nah, I don't know.
I like to like, because I have an ace up my sleeve, so like you'll definitely guess one of them, but you'll never guess the other one.
The other one.
They never guess the Burmese part of me.
Yeah. Speaking of like differences among Asians, I think maybe you guys have heard this come up in the last week that contrary to the model minority myth, we're not all doing so great. Like, not all Asians be rich. There'd be the crazy rich ones, and then there'd be like.
But once you do comedy,
right. Like the ones in my family. Just to clarify, like where my economic standing is. My dad's side hustle was goats. Like,
yeah.
Like, sounds delicious.
Not the sneaker app, right? Okay, the actual animal.
Actual goats. And to clarify, we did not own a farm. This was not a property that could accommodate a livestock situation. But Filipinos, sometimes they had like graduations or weddings or something, and somebody was going to need a goat. So that was like, they came to us, I guess. So just like to dispel that myth that like some of us like know what food stamps look like back when they were little change 'em ups, little coupons. Am I the only one? Am I the only crazy broke Asian in the room? Yeah, okay, I guess.
No, I mean, I don't know how to answer a question.
Well, I just want to understand. Yeah, go ahead.
I think, like, even within my own family, there's a huge, like, class difference. I mean, like, a lot of my family in the Philippines are all over the archipelago. A huge part of them are in the provinces. My grandma on my mom's side, she, like, put all her 6 children through school by being a pig farmer. And, like that was their thing. But like on my dad's side, there's definitely more like Imelda Marcos types who like I hate, can't stand, but like they give you more money, so you have to hang out with them. And so,
crazy
like,
rich cousins.
It's the sort of thing where like even within a single family, there's that level of disparity, and it can be really weird, like especially in the way that people cope or even talk and communicate about like difficult issues. Like my dad's side of the family are very like yellers. Everybody yells. I'm pretty sure most of them are like very hard of hearing. That's probably a huge part of it, but like they seriously only ever are like decibel 20. And on my mom's side of the family, everyone's very sweet and like laughing, but like when they laugh, like what do they actually feel? I can't tell.
Yeah, I find it really hard to describe my family situation because on my dad's side of the family, we have lots of like scholars and professors. And then on my mom's side of the family, we're very working class. Like my grandpa was a parole officer for many years. They would call him the Chinese Clint Eastwood because he was crazy. And then we have a lot of my uncles are an electrician, a cop. And then my mom went to Yale, but she's a writer, and my dad's a photographer. So they're outliers within that scheme too.
Right. Yeah, I feel it's a very Asian American move to be like one or the other, and it's like embedded in a lot of immigrant mentalities, because when I was going to school, it became very obvious that I wasn't going to be a doctor just because I was bad. and then my dad was just like, all right, mechanic, got it. You know what I'm saying? That was like the aspirational level of Asian parents. It's just like, you're either going to be 1%er or it's to DeVry with you, buddy. Like what I try to do is I just try to be aggressively mediocre, just like boom, office manager at a small company. Yes, that's me, baby. Like, I think that's my political act. I'm neither one of these things. So, but I think you can't undo the race from the class. I mean, that's the first thing our parents will ask after. Well, what are they? What if you bring home a partner, are they Vietnamese or are they Asian? What do their parents do? That's like the second question always. So, you know, it's just, it's definitely an immigrant experience and an Asian experience.
I think it's also, sorry, go ahead. I think it's also complicated by the fact that just that act of migration interrupts your family's whole situation
100%.
in such a huge way. And I know for my, background, people in South Asia, because partition happened in my grandparents' generation, that was already such a huge rupture for them. And then like for their children or them to come again to like a new country. And my mom's parents actually left. They left Pakistan, they went to Kenya, then they went to England, then they went to Canada. And so I also have this different, on my mom's side and versus my dad's side. And so it's also like the way that immigration has historically worked in this country. It's like, even if the only people who were allowed in for many years were, educated upper class people, when they came, it wasn't like they were automatically allowed to fulfill those kind of roles. And I think that has been like a big identity crisis for a lot of our elders as well.
Sure. I also think about it in the context of like, this book, because I'm like reading Rainbow, but right? Like where it's like the model minority myth. It's like where we get held up as the litmus test for all other ethnic minorities to be like, if maybe not Mike, if Mike can be a mechanic, but say his older brother's that doctor or that lawyer. Sorry to throw you under the bus, Mike.
Nope.
But,
Yep. That's what, I'm actually a mechanic, so underneath the bus is where I belong. So
that's
yes.
right. You just roll on under, right? But like where like, and this has been my experience as someone like being an undercover Mexican and sometimes being an undercover Asian, it like makes my head spin. The things that I'm privy to, where it's like, where like my acceleration or my advancement in school was like attributed to my eyes. It was like, you're Asian, your culture, you're blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my broke ass single Mexican mom was the one raising me and hustling to, change up food stamps and shit. So it's like, none of what you're saying about like my culture is making me any better at math. And in fact, it means that you didn't diagnose that I had dyslexia my whole fucking life. And I was just like really good. I was like, I would compensate for being dyslexic by studying really hard, but like, where like so many people are actually part of the Asian community and like living in poverty. I think it's something like 10% or 25% of Asian Americans in New York City alone live under the poverty line. And yet we are held up as this like totem for all other racial and ethnic groups in the United States to like aspire to being like, if they can just be like culturally good enough. It looks like you're trying to say something, Michelle.
Oh no, I'm just enthralled. I can't get over that you actually held up a book. I feel like for that to happen for quite some time.
Really? They're always here, and I was like, I know I have like an Asian American studies. So if you guys want to know what like $100,000 worth of student loan debt looks like,
a pink jack-o'-lantern bucket.
I went to NYU and I studied acting, and there was like this weird thing where they're like, well, you're like a diversity student here or whatever, and it's like, but I don't have any lines in this Shakespeare, like, it's not like there's a lot of mobility for me.
Yeah. I want a TV show about Otter's crazy grandpa. Like, I'm dealing with that. But yeah, I think we're also like easing into talking about like why we're all here, which is like what has happened in this particular week. And John, I know you had
St. Patty's Day, right, guys? That's what
man.
We're all putting some green behind us.
Michelle is raging.
Yeah.
Michelle is raging.
Everyone else has smart topics for tonight on the Goss, and I just kept talking about how I wanted to rant about how I'm so mad about people celebrating St. Patrick's Day.
Go off. It's your time. Go off.
Go off.
Okay. All right, let's exist in this fantasy world for one moment, okay? I'll humor you, Irish Americans, that St. Patrick's Day is genuinely celebrating and honoring and acknowledgement the anti-Irish immigrants sentiment and history in this country. Let's enter that world for one moment, right? If we're acknowledging that history, right? Then we also have to acknowledge later in our history when Irish Americans were, I don't know, that was probably like turn of the century, like post Tammany Hall, when we were just finished dodging Bill the Butcher in the street, when Irish Americans were able to successfully assimilate into white America, right? Which is now hegemonic, right? Which is now the main divide. It's between Eurocentric, like white Americans and the rest of us who will never pass, right? And Asian Americans, like as per Dominique's segment, despite the model minority myth, right, we'll never be able to assimilate. We will never look like white people enough, right? I'm half white and I know that I'll never look white enough to like fully pass in some spaces, right?
But
And
have you
so-
tried contouring?
Not with that attitude. Come
I'm
on.
contoured, okay? I'm the closest we're gonna get. Apparently, it's not working, and we'll never be fully able to assimilate. And on a day when we were reminded of that, because 8 people were murdered because of that, right? Like we will never pass, we will never assimilate, we will always be others, and as a result, we are risking our lives. That is the day that you decided to post about your Irish heritage, celebrating this assimilation. Right? Which is not really celebrating that assimilation. It's about you looking cute in a green outfit and asking people to give you a smooch. It is so stupid. And it's like, the holiday is about this man chasing snakes out of Ireland, which you like never even mention. Right? Like it's absolutely abhorrent to me that you would shove that in our faces. And this moment on this day that these people were murdered because of like an inherent truth about your identity. And it was just so disgusting to me. And it was annoying because it was kind of like, were the stakes really that high? Did you really have to do that? Did it really like fulfill you and your cultural identity to like post you in a green outfit talking about how pure milky white your skin is and you burn in the sun and that's funny? Like, it's like, I don't want to see that. Like I was so bad. You've entered the rant zone. Thank you for that.
Also, I just want to throw out there that because of Ireland's climate, there never were any snakes in Ireland. I just want to put that out.
Yeah.
They were driving out the pagans, so they were killing people.
Yeah.
That's what they were celebrating.
Yeah.
Okay, so the snakes were people, is what we
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
They were pagans. And Catholicism
I
took over Ireland.
Just got that.
I love
Yeah.
the rant zone. I want to carry around the sign.
I will allow you one. I will allow you one St. Patrick's Day. You better be giving me a full river dance. You better be
One full river
speaking
dance.
Gaelic. You better be whipping up a loaf of soda bread. Okay, that is
Yeah.
culturally significant and like go off. But if you are just sitting here in a green outfit, with the duck lips on site.
Yeah, I used to say that St. Patrick's Day was the one day that white people felt. This is before everything went to shit, but it's the one white day where white people felt comfortable being racist, and therefore it's the purge for racists. You know, right? So it's just like for 24 hours, everything goes. You know,
That is
Hey,
Leprechaun,
what's up,
right?
man? I'm like, oh.
But even that, like, even with the all the leprechaun shit, like, hearing no one sounds like that in Ireland. It's so offensive. Like, what the fuck? Not only are they being fucked, like they're just fucking over actual Irish people on St. Patty's Day. It's
Like
ridiculous.
Lucky Charm, like the Lucky. How do they not sound like the Leprechaun? The movie Leprechaun or TV Leprechaun? How do they not sound?
Stereotypes today.
It's so many leprechauns though.
My uncle actually got in trouble at his Catholic school because he wore a button that said St. Patrick was Chinese. And he got real beat up for that. But my mom's side of the family would be like, we're the Moys, but we shortened it from Moynihan.
Honor, like, I hate / love that story. I don't know because, like, I hate that happened to him, but I love that he did that. And what is your family? I think we need can I get the pilot episode of your family?
I think it would do well in limited bursts. I don't know how well it would do like overall as an arc because we're very self-destructive.
People love that. That's what all reality TV is. I mean,
Real talk. Honestly, just to the point though, I do think that white supremacists get multiple holidays a year. It's like St. Patrick's Day,
SantaCon,
Cinco de Mayo, SantaCon. It's just like
regular Christmas.
Yeah.
But yeah, like of all the days, everyone else real St. Patrick was black. Honestly, I love it. And that shit. I'm gonna tell the story anyways, even though my partner is in the chat. But I like whatever. You broke up with me for a minute, okay? And then I went on a Tinder date, and I was with an Irishman who was like, low key, oh, you do comedy, so let me tell you about how it's okay for me to use the N-word because that's comedy. And that conversation lasted for 2 blocks, in which, in that amount of time, I said, okay. Well, I'm gonna go this way. Thank you. Have a nice life. And I left him on a street, and he was like, "Are you really like cutting this date short? You're really leaving me here on the street?" And I was like, "I am." That's where I take my cues. I gotta go find a Subway or a sandwich, but like this or a Subway sandwich. But it was bad.
A Subway sandwich or a Subway sandwich.
Truly, it was just like, do you not get how that your oppression ended 100 years ago, and also it does not entitle you to use racial slurs of other groups? It was truly wild. I don't recommend dating generally, and I don't recommend if you do date white people. I'm so sorry. Like, but
that's what I came here for. That's
That's the healing zone. Now we're in the healing zone.
delicious.
I think Jonathan, you had.
Jonathan has a real segment.
Yeah.
Oh my god. With clips and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on Wednesday there was a press conference at the Cherokee County Police Station, and I thought I'd just show 3 clips from that. I'm sure you guys may have seen some or all of this already. But yeah, this first clip is from the sheriff who is giving the department's take on the motivation behind the attacks. And it's
and I think last year we had 1 murder. We don't have a lot of crime in that area, so this is a shock to all of us. Captain, am I missing anything? We did interview him last night. He is currently in our facility at the Cherokee County Adult Detention Center. We were able to interview him with the Atlanta Police Department and FBI. He made indicators that he has some issues, potentially sexual addiction, and may have frequented some of these places in the past. But as the chief indicated, it's still early on. We still have a lot of things to process, and so he should be at an arraignment tomorrow at some time early morning to late morning, and we will keep you up to date. We have a press release that Captain Baker has put together, available to our media folks. If you don't have that, I think we have some printed copies that he'll be happy to give to you. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah. So the first thing that strikes me, I guess the whole thing for me mainly is just like, why does it have to be just one? Like, was it either racially motivated, or was he addicted to sex, and so he wanted to lash out because of his like sex addiction? And I feel like a lot of people are talking about this on the internet too. It's like, why can't we accept that it could be both?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Or that if in fact a fetish is a racist thing, right? Like that fetishes are the confluence of like sexualization and racial stereotype. And also just the idea, the caucasity of using sex addiction as an excuse. Like, there are plenty of people who have sex addictions. There are plenty of people in recovery who just fucking watch porn all day, or buy fleshlights, or like get a blow up doll, or, you know, OnlyFans. Like, there are so many other things you can do that are not murder.
Yeah.
Right, like
the
they're-
caucasity is right. His thing was I was too horny. That's why I killed these people. It's insane. So absolutely, man.
But nobody who's an addict kills the thing they're addicted to. People that are
Yeah.
addicted to drugs don't go around trying to destroy drugs. They're trying to enjoy them. People that
Yeah,
are
I think-
addicted to shoplifting, they don't try
No.
to destroy. You know what I mean? They want
try
to steal things.
I think they try to destroy them when they are like so fucked up. Like, I think this is also, I see a lot of parallels with this happening in the way that Black trans women are murdered at very high rates because people cannot fucking fathom that they have desires and they're so like internally homophobic and internally racist that it's like, but they won't, rather than accepting that this potential lies in them to desire and love someone of this body, they want to eliminate the source of it rather than what they should do, which is punch your own self in the dick. I don't know, dude. Like, if you wanted to go shoot a thing, shoot your penis off. If you felt like you couldn't hang.
Yeah. You could definitely control your urges by doing that instead of killing other people. I never understand that. They're always trying to, if you want to do a murder suicide, just kill yourself and make believe like you killed somebody else.
And
Like,
I just hate the gaslighting so much, especially from like white people. I had to like log off social media for a while. Who are like, haha, it was sexual addiction. It's not about race, you dumb bitch. And it's
Crisis
like,
averted.
You're awful. Like you people are awful. Like they're looking for any reason. We're like, stop making everything about race. And it's like, stop killing us and telling us to ignore it and telling us that it's not what we think it is. You know.
Okay, obviously we're all Asian and we're good at math, right? So we can
No,
count.
I'm not. My SAT score got worse. My math score got worse after I took it again. After being tutored.
You should pay a different Asian person to take it. They think we're it's like are you gonna tell me that you killed 6 Asian women in one day and it's not a pattern? No.
Yeah.
Didn't someone bring up like he passed by like 3 strip clubs on his way there too? Like, so the whole sex thing doesn't really add up.
right. It's very
Yeah.
specifically Asian women. It's not, I mean, I don't know how people could see it. I'm not Asian and I can see, I mean, I don't know, maybe because I'm not white, I can't see the way they're explaining it to me. But like, he killed Asian, he specifically went to kill Asian women, and that's what he went and did, and he should be dead right now. I'm not about really killing people or whatever. It's not a right thing, but he was a violent criminal committing gruesome acts, and he came in with a bulletproof vest. Like, he was still and he didn't have any scratches on him. He's in the Cherokee County jail instead of Atlanta jail, right? Why is that? He committed those crimes, and I'm sure it's bigger.
I wanted to point out too, though, that like during this press conference, all those white men just looked so guilty for some reason. They were just like the way that they kind of were like, well, okay. And then we spoke to the guy and like, okay, I think I kind of get where he's coming from. And like, okay, I guess there were just so many layers about this that was just like, these guys just don't seem professional at all, but also, man, they look guilty as fuck trying to ask somebody who just murdered people, hey, how you doing? How was that?
What's on your mind, right?
Yeah. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah. I just felt this element of like a dad defending his kid after the kid's like in a joint conference at the PTA.
Right.
And also
there's
there was
sympathy. It's sympathetic.
Yeah.
Good.
There was like this element when at the very start of the statement where he was like, "Oh, like we never have murders here, right? Like it like we're one of the good precincts or whatever. Like why would this happen, right? Like it felt off to me."
Right. Well, I mean, going to the kind of idea of who do you identify with, right? The police identify with the murderer,
Yeah.
Right.
You identify with who you look like, right? They see themselves in this person. And they, the thing that always has been kind of freaking me out really is that, the victims are non-people, women of color, sex workers are non-people. And you see this in all media, like anything where it has to do with an Asian woman and there's a GI, that woman usually in movies, they die. They don't get named. It's just a thing that happens again and again. There's some people who are people and there's some people who are not people. And so I think that's just playing out in very quickly in this little, like the way they just talk about the incident, in this media clip.
Yeah.
I mean, oh, sorry, Otto, you were going to say something earlier, right?
No. I'm good. I'm not good. This sucks.
Yeah. I mean, I'm drinking heavily now, so it's cool.
I mean, honestly, I feel like talking about it is helpful and being around other Asian folks, especially like when we're isolated in the pandemic and the only thing we're seeing is like coming through media. It is white people at the top of all of those institutions making all of those decisions, filtering all of those voices. And something I want to like get into is this notion of them being, whether or not they were sex workers, right? Because there are people who are like, they were sex workers, they weren't.
Right.
And in
it
some
doesn't
sense,
matter.
like,
They shouldn't.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Right. On the one hand, I'm like, I do think that there is a politics within the Asian American community, like what you were talking about earlier with like the mechanics, Mike, where it's like, booze fam who are like professors maybe don't want to talk about potential sex workers being part of the Asian American community, the experience. Regardless, no one should have been met with that violence. Sex work is work. Sex workers deserve rights and respect the same with everybody else. But I think there's this way where like people's hesitation around that is causing some kind of like tension, I feel. Am I the only one getting this vibe or no?
To that effect, Dom, can we show the next clip?
Thanks.
It's relevant.
Thank you, producer Will on the backside.
Yeah. Thank you, Will.
Roll the tape, Will.
We are not about to get into victim blaming, victim shaming here. As far as we know in Atlanta, we've not had any calls, 911 calls from that location. I believe one minor call on someone stealing some keys. So we don't know additional information about what his motives were, but we certainly will not begin to blame victims. And as far as we know in Atlanta, these are legally operating businesses that have not been on our radar, not on the radar of APD.
Right.
Yeah, I couldn't hear what the guy was saying, but I'm guessing it was something to the effect of like, were they like legit?
Yeah. And in the chat, we got, why are the priors of the places? Why do the priors matter? Like, what does that matter in this context?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's what they do. They try to pin it on the victim another way, right? Like the same thing with, like if somebody black got shot or whoever got shot.
Yeah, Trayvon Martin or
always.
Amadou Diallo, like they always want to know if they had a rap sheet, as if you could see the rap sheet in the context of
their body, right? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, all this, it's all the sociology is bubbling up in my mind. You read the signals and the signs. There's only one way to be innocent, and that's to be white. There's only one way to, you cannot. There's a shorthand that people use, and I think there's a shorthand that people are, trying to mobilize in order to like kind of make sense of this story. I think the way to try to mitigate that is, humanization, right? These are people. These are not just the people who give you a massage, or these are not just the people who give you a manicure. You ever notice that people don't look these people in the eye because you don't only look humans in the eye. So this is I think a key thing, and I think that story of whether or not they were sex workers, whether or not they were this, they were not just that. You would never describe someone as just one thing. So I think that's part of what we need to do is delve into these things that these are human beings who died.
There's a thing that happens at the beginning which I thought was interesting, which is at the beginning he's like, okay, we're gonna release the names of the victims after this, and after the conference is over, he's like, all right, he walks off. He almost forgets for a second that he was gonna do it, and he's like, oh, okay, we'll be posting the press of the names after this, and it just feels like really like, all right, well, I forgot about this, but I'm gonna post it now.
Right.
Like an afterthought.
Just to go back to what Dominique was saying about kind of the respectability politics of it all. It's true. The only way to be innocent is to be white. But at the same time, we're also entrenched in this system of white supremacy that kind of assigns values to so many things that it's almost an instinct. Like, even though you know that it's not going to protect you to be educated or to be rich or to be law-abiding or to live in a particular neighborhood, like it's almost an instinct to be like, but maybe if I explain this one thing, maybe if I talk about how like I've never been arrested before, or I mean, even that is like totally, it's not about you, right? It's about the environment that you live in. But it's like, even though a lot of us recognize that that's not going to protect us, but the instinct to do so is so ingrained in us just by the air that we breathe every day.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, when I go to return anything at Macy's, I put on makeup and I wear nice clothes because otherwise they treat me like shit. But this whole like being a good victim thing isn't so abstract, and it's not just happening, unfortunately, to these women who were murdered. A few weeks ago, my husband and I were assaulted by a man who told me to go back to China. And when we were reporting it to the Asian cop, first of all, they only wrote down one person was assaulted, even though I told them it was both of us because they were trying to keep their numbers low because it's Brooklyn and they don't want that. And then they were also asking, this guy had taken up a lot of my space. I asked him to move away from me. He kept coming close and I was like, it's a pandemic, please give me some space. And he berated me and said all this shit. And I told him to fuck off. And the cop's angle was like, well, did you say something back to him? Do you think he maybe wouldn't have kicked you if you hadn't said anything to him? And it was like, I'm not provoking an attack by saying that I deserve to exist in space. But the way that it's either you're supposed to do absolutely nothing and just get fucked over, and then it's okay.
Yeah.
But the moment that
it's your right as a New Yorker, Come on. Step off me, dang, Yeah.
And actually, on that, the way that hate crimes are reported is really problematic right now, because it's like, oh, if someone punches you in the face during this huge epidemic of anti-Asian violence, but they don't say a racial slur, they'll be like, well, we don't know if it was a hate crime or not. But if someone calls you a racial slur and they don't punch you in the face, they're like, well, that was hate speech, not a hate crime, even if they threatened your life, if they didn't act
Someone
on
needs
it.
to be screaming, I'm committing a hate crime while committing a hate crime in order for the police officer to be like, oh, okay.
But if they did that, then did they really mean it? Because
I don't know.
Were they wearing merch? Did they have a string from his shirt?
He's a cosplayer. Come on.
I know. It's you got to have that hate speech bracelet for.
You have to scan the hate speech QR code on your phone.
Yeah.
I think that's what's so difficult is not only do perpetrators have to be woke enough to realize the depths of intersectionality that their hate is coming from, how the fuck are these cops asking the murderer, was it hate? Was it because they were Asian, or was it because you're just sexually repressed, or was it because you were actually, conditioned to fetishize Asian women by, going to these places and blah, 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 and then your childhood crying? That's, what the fuck is that? That's not supposed to be how the law works, or whatever the law is supposed to be.
And so
but at the same time, no, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was gonna say, and so many people are being I believe him, right? That we're supposed to take his word because he's a white man, right?
I think
Sorry,
one of the things that I work now in media, and I have felt such betrayal for the most part, because like this has been going on for so long, and we knew from last year, even before coronavirus hit the US, that this was getting bad. I mean, most of us were celebrating New York City's first all Asian comedy festival together, right? That same week, Lunar New
Amazing.
Year, right,
Yeah.
was the same time when like the news was starting to hit that, oh, this thing in China is a big deal and it's going to be a pandemic. Hasn't even hit New York City that was January. By March, when we did our Asian Strike Back show to like just say something, it hadn't even hit New York until we got out of that building and we're like, oh shit, all our jokes are like no use anymore. But like the fact that we've had all that time and there has been zero space to talk about the layers at play when it comes to overt and covert racism the Asians and Asian Americans experience, that isn't, like the same level of, it's just a different level of hatred and racism compared to like what Black Americans are experiencing. It's different. But the fact that there's not spaces, especially at that level of media, to talk about it and unpack it as it's going on for a year, that we need that much of a body count to finally get people to pay attention, that fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's because there's no. I think part of it is like one thing when I was like writing comedy about Asian shit. It's always like so much fucking work because you're like I have to set up all this Asian shit for a white person who doesn't understand as premise information before I get to my joke. And I feel like there's a parallel with like the same thing as it relates to comedy as it relates to like the emotional labor of that is required of the victim to explain like why this is actually bad. Like it's actually like, like you were saying before, like, oh, a fetish is actually racist because of like the history of like all this shit you've been subjected to unconsciously. And one thing I noticed is that like, how like after like any kind of crime or any kind of like thing that like spurs a lot of like outrage on social media, there's like a tile with like a block text, right? Like someone will post on Instagram, like this is like my take on the thing. And then I noticed like with this, like all my Asian friends need like 5 to 6 tiles to like fully explain like all the shit that is like, okay, so the first thing you have to understand is, okay, just let me I'll back up. Okay, so Asian kid in the country. Like how much fucking do I have to like pre-roll my rant to like justify the feelings that I'm having that I'm mad? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I also
it's
feel like there's a
exhausting.
way of that there's like not only do I have to talk to white people, I also have to talk to like some BIPOC non-Asian allies, right?
Yeah.
And because I feel there's a way where anti-Asian violence is a joke. Like it's still a joke in a way for a lot of folks, in a way that people are coming around to anti-Black racism and being like, oh, dadoy, like maybe not that. But because we exist on this like liminal space of the racial hierarchy between, right? And we are held up as the good kids, then it's like we have to like provide all the history and be like, okay, in 1857 in LA, they lynched 8 Chinese people. That's a thing. Like Vincent Chin was murdered in the 8th. Like we have to like tell you not only that it happened, it kept happening and it's still happening. It's like, I don't know, comedy rule of 3, but like flipped.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I was gonna say in the
Go ahead,
comedy
Otto.
community, I've noticed like throughout the entire pandemic, like comedians, sometimes even comedians that like I respect who are BIPOC or LGBTQ plus, like they will still make Asian jokes or sort of like racist adjacent jokes because they think it's okay in society for a lot of people. They don't recognize it on the same level. Like there was this huge reckoning in June, right, with sort of like racial systems of inequity, especially in the entertainment industry, and that still hasn't even begun to happen for Asian people yet. And we have to fight for it, and it's so exhausting because we just want to make our art and like live and not be killed, but it's a lot.
So is it about making more people aware, like somehow lowering the bar since the bar is so high for people to accept that it's a hate crime?
I'm sorry, can you state again? I think I'm confused about what you're asking.
Would you guys say that the bar is like set really high for agents for like hate crimes against Asians to be considered? Since there's so much like explaining that you have to do.
I think that the bar for hate crimes is the same for everyone, but I feel like culture, like, you know, those are legal definitions, but culturally, because we exist in this liminal space where it's not so obvious, right? Where like the civil rights movement wasn't organized by Asian people. Like we've had like other social movements in this like smaller, less visible way that like our struggles aren't known. But Mike, you were going to say something earlier, and I don't want to like step over that too.
No. You know, I think you got a great point, Dominique, and I think the whole thing with the law is that it's like kind of there to protect us, but I kind of think of it almost like HR. You know, if you go to HR with something, HR is there to protect the company.
Yeah.
The law is there to protect the government. It's not there to really protect us. It's just it is and it isn't. I mean, you know, and the thing with a hate crime, I mean, yes, you know, a hate crime, you see it, you know, it's a hate crime, but the law is written in a way so that it is defined in a certain way, and it has to reach certain bars in order for it, blah, 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 whatever. Don't look to the law to protect you. Don't look to the police to protect you. The police's job is not to protect you. They don't have to come to protect you. They often fail. You protect yourself. And I don't mean that in like, you know, go get a knife or something. I mean that in you make space in order to protect yourself. And I think the thing that we need to do as comedians or actors, writers, and stuff like that is to create language and stories where people can quickly get to where you need them to go quick. I will say, for example, there's if when you talk about the relationship between Black people and Asian people, you go and you do it in a comedy way. You go Rush Hour, and everybody goes, "I got exactly what you mean." And that's a stupid example, but it's very true because as soon as I say it, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and that is because everybody watched a 2-hour thing, and as soon as I say it, I can get to you really quickly. And I think creating more stories, creating more language so that people can understand, you know, remember Black Lives Matter, the phrase took years to develop, years and years and years of work to develop. When it first came out, people didn't support it. People were skeptical of it, you know. I have to admit, I was like, oh, what does this mean? And it took years for people to go. And now in retrospect, of course, it makes perfect sense. But it took years for that language to take root and for people to understand. Now, the majority of Americans believe Black Lives Matter. So it's that kind of work, I think, that will be needed.
People were skeptical of Rush Hour too, also.
Exactly.
On that
Not
note,
Jackie, baby.
Jackie
was 100% confident the whole way through.
Love it, Jackie
Jackie was
Chan.
so sad, you know?
But in terms of also ours, our time is coming to a close, and I really want to thank everybody for being here, for contributing, for sharing your thoughts and helping process. And I want to just give everybody like a last thought recap. If we like start off with Kyle and work our way back around. To put you on the spot. Any like last parting thoughts, Kyle?
Demand the space. Like I think I really want to do a second Asian Strike Back. But it's that thing of like demanding that people need to know we want our space and deserve our space to talk about our stories and our comedy, and that they have to level up so that they can understand where our comedy is coming from, that we're not spending all that time having to explain their injustices to them. So I think that's, just take space.
Very cool. Thank you, Kyle. Mike, what about you?
Oh man, I think I had my awesome rant earlier. So it is, you know, about taking up space. It is about telling stories and collaborating. You know, write everything you can.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. And let's get back over to Anissa.
I think what you both said before me about narrative is so important. Like in so many cases, we just have the narrative stolen away from us. A lot of times we're invisible from the narrative. And even when we're talking about things like police, they're the ones who say these things, like even things that we were really angry about, like he's having a bad day or whatever. Like this narrative gets out there so quickly. And because the narrative is so geared and biased towards one particular perspective, it's so hard to like pull that narrative back to where it needs to be. So yeah, I think there's just a lot of work to be done to claim that narrative and to, like you were saying, take space in that narrative and tell our stories.
100%. Thanks, Anissa. Woody, what you got?
Going off of what Anissa and both Mike were saying, it's the thing is to make art in order to communicate what your feelings are. And I think the fastest way to do that is to make something that lets the audience who's watching it know what you emotionally are feeling. And if you can do that, then they get what you're going through, and that's empathy. That's the whole thing.
I love it. Thank you, Woody. Inspiring. Otter,
as far as like concluding statements, I heard a lot of horror stories from over the summer about like everybody's liberal white friends calling their BIPOC friends and checking in with them. But I actually found some of those calls really reassuring, even if it was for their white guilt. I don't know. Like, I feel like as a culture, we don't talk about our emotions and our feelings enough. So even if it's like you're not able to talk to your family about it, if you have a support net that you can reach out to, it feels really good.
Yeah, especially now. Thank you. Thanks, Otter. And I forget if Greg is next on the grid. I forget. But yeah.
I don't know. It's me. I'm here.
Papi, Tío Greg.
Thank you for allowing me in this space to share with y'all. I mean, really, I think one of the big issues is people not having close proximity to Asian culture, the different cultures within Asian people, and they're really missing out. So you guys creating stories and content and pushing your content out, I think it's nice for people so they can understand other people's lives and what they go through, and then also fuck them and make it because you like it, and I'll laugh at it. I'm here to laugh. I got your back, for real. And if anybody needs any help, let me know. I don't work from 7 to 10, so I got time. If I got to whoop some ass, we can whoop some ass. Just give me about an hour and a half.
Okay.
I got to take a shower first.
Tío Greg, the real one.
I'm into it.
I like.
The realest real one. John Lou, sorry. What about you?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
For me, I think it's just giving myself permission to write about this stuff. Because I haven't in the past.
Fuck yeah. I'll do it. Thank you. And Michelle Chan Bennett.
Okay, let's get St. Patrick's Day off the calendar. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I guess this speaks to gaslighting for the entire Asian community, but I also want to speak specifically to multiracial people, that it's difficult to feel justified in any space. I think I personally often feel that I have to justify my identity, or I have to pass any type of way to feel safe in that space. And so thank you to the Goss and then this space for, accepting me as an Asian American. But I also think at this time you need to own whatever you're experiencing is real, whatever fear or whatever emotion you're experiencing is real and justified. And you have the right to have spaces to process it. And the last thing you need to be doing right now is to be questioning your identity. You need to be celebrating it and processing whatever this time means for you. So don't let anyone else define you. Rant zone.
Rant zone is right next to AutoZone.
Rant zone.
True.
We have a white ally who's going to contribute. This is not me. It was a white ally. So let's roll that tape from a white ally.
Go off.
Here, hook it up.
No, I'm just kidding.
There he is.
I think I've dated him.
That was my beauty.
Is that a real website?
I'm buying it.
So yeah, I guess our white allies have come through. Check out whitemandickpunch.com.
White man is still gonna profit from that though.
I know.
That's another fetish though.
I love it.
That guy's
my-
definitely doing St. Patrick's. Yeah, go ahead.
For sure he is in Cinco de Mayo. My closing remarks to everybody is like to find places of resilience and joy in whatever way is accessible to you, because COVID is a trauma and we've got trauma on top of trauma. And like, there's no reason that we need to hold on to things or hold things in. And if you guys want to plug your social in the chat, follow these very funny Asian AM comedians, support their work, support Asian folks in your communities wherever you are on the globe, because we out here, we in these streets. And also give it up for Laura and Pavar for making this space for us. Check it out. Follow us at the Goss Gab on Instagram. Subscribe to the Litverse on all the socials on YouTube. Subscribe there. Follow us here on Twitch and also on Instagram at the Litverse. You guys have been amazing. Thank you all so much for coming today, and thank you everybody for being here. See you guys next week on the Goss. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.